Now, if you try to start celebrating Christmas as early as possible, you love to drink all of your hot drinks from festive mugs, and you really enjoy reading cosy classics at this time of year, I'm going to need you to raise your hand. And if your hand is raised, well, great news, because me too, which means that we are in great company together. And now that November has arrived, I simply couldn't resist the Christmas spirit for a second longer, so I've fully unleashed all of my festive excitement. The first thing I did was naturally getting Christmas mugs out of the cupboard and starting to drink all of my hot drinks from seasonal crockery. And the second thing I did was that I started planning some Christmas reading that I'll be doing in December. Now, of course, we're only at the start of November, so you might be thinking, aren't you getting a bit ahead of yourself? Why are you planning next month's reading instead of just reading something this month? Well, the reason for that is because there are really only a few months out of the year where reading a book set in December that talks all about Christmas excitement in the lead up to the festive season feels right. And because of that fact, that means that there are only a limited number of festive books you can read every year, because quite frankly, time exists, and that means that we are limited to what we can fit in life in the lead up to Christmas. And so because of that, I think it is all the more important to start planning early so that you can think about which festive books you really want to prioritise this year. Now, a lot of the time I focus on trying to get new Christmas books in and read things that I haven't read before, quite frankly, because of that time limitation. But this year I really want to prioritise the reread of a festive classic, or a classic that isn't necessarily a Christmas classic but that feels just so fitting for this time of year, and I think for a lot of people is associated with the Christmas season. And that classic for me is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and I'm planning to reread Little Women throughout December. And I wanted to extend the invitation and say that if anyone else was planning to read or reread Little Women this Christmas time, then why not do it together? Now, Christmas this year, or rather December this year, starts on a Friday, so I have planned out to a T how many chapters need to be read each week between the 1st of December and the 24th of December, which is a Sunday, and of course Christmas Eve. And we need to read 8 chapters in the first week, and then the 3 weeks following we read 13 chapters a week, and that takes us right from the 1st all the way to Christmas Eve with Little Women and this wonderful story. So that is what I plan to do this December, and I wanted to get in there early in case there are any other crazy festive planners who are also thinking about their Christmas reading, because I wanted to beat the crowd and get in there so that I can secure your time and attention for this very important festive buddy read. So it'll be very casual. I'll just be doing all of my Vlogmas vlogs as usual and chatting about Little Women throughout the month, and if you happen to be joining me, then you can just comment your thoughts as we go, and we can share this wonderful and wholesome cozy reading experience together throughout December. So with that said, I'm going to put Little Women to the side for a few weeks, but I, for one, am very excited about this reread, and I hope that some of you will join me for it. But for now, the book that I'm planning to read this weekend is actually another reread, but not a classic. It's actually Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Now, this year I have very slowly been making my way through a reread of the Harry Potter series. The last time I picked one up was in August when I was on holiday, and I obviously read The Goblet of Fire. Haven't had a chance to pick one up since, but I feel like November kind of feels like the transition from warm autumn into like cool crisp autumn, and as I'm looking outside of my office window, it just feels so testament to that fact, because just a couple of weeks ago the ash tree that I can see outside of my window was still bright green with leaves, and now it is completely bare, and it really does feel like we've transitioned into winter. And I feel like that is the sensation you get from this book in the Harry Potter series as you move from, I guess, like the more innocent and warm side of the series into like the much darker side of Harry's story. And I feel like November just seemed like the perfect time to pick this one up, so I'll be starting to reread The Order of the Phoenix this weekend. But for now, I'm actually heading to my mum's house, back to the festive celebrations, because I was raised by a woman obsessed with Christmas, and I think that's probably why I love Christmas so much as well. It's just in my DNA. My dad also rewatches Love Actually, I want to say like 20 times each December, so There was no doubt about it, I was always going to love Christmas, but every October or November time, me, my mum and my sister like to do a Christmas movie day, so I'm going round to their house this afternoon and we're going to watch Home Alone, have some food and start to celebrate Christmas, as we should now that November has arrived. Then the rest of the weekend is actually going to be focused on celebrating Jay's birthday because he turns 27 on Tuesday, so it's very exciting. So we've got lots of fun things planned, but for now, is it any surprise to say that I'm running late, so I'm going to head out the door, go to my mum's house and start to celebrate Christmas. Welcome to the festive season. Today is one of those days where it is so sunny and blue outside that I actually can't quite believe it's November. Although I must admit, I'm probably allowing myself to get tricked by the warmth of this car that I'm currently sitting in, which is obviously heated up very nicely, and so paired with the blue skies outside, I feel like it's summertime, but actually in reality, I'm probably up for a very rude awakening when I step outside, because I think it's probably going to be a whole lot colder out there than it is in here, even though it does look lovely and sunny out there. We are actually by the coast, which means that it's probably going to be even colder and windier, so just kind of psyching myself up for that. But when out in Wales to celebrate Jay's birthday, which is actually today. We've booked a couple of days in Anglesey in a little Airbnb just to go away somewhere really. There wasn't really any specific reason we picked this place other than we were looking all over for Airbnbs, which I must admit seem to have had a steep price increase recently. Like, I remember a few years ago, pre-COVID, we would like book an Airbnb somewhere really lovely and it would be like a proper bargain, and now I feel like we were struggling to find anywhere that was just like a small cabin for less than like £100 a night, which is kind of ridiculous. We did manage to find somewhere in Anglesey, which is really lovely, and today for Jay's actual birthday day we've driven to Holyhead, which is an island just off of Anglesey, where there are some nice coastal walks. Apparently, I usually leave all of the planning of things like walking and hiking routes to Jay because he's far better at that than I am, and he actually enjoys it, whereas I just find it so hard to plan things like this. So Jay's planned some nice walking routes, I think like along the coastline, and also there is a mountain that we're going to be climbing up. I say mountain in inverted commas because it's only about 300 meters high, which is obviously not very high, but is like the highest bit of this specific area, which means that although we actually don't have a huge amount of climbing to do, we'll get a lovely view of the coast, fingers crossed. So that is really what we have on the agenda for today, and then I'm hoping that we'll go and find either some nice food or some coffee and cake to warm us up after the walk, but we'll have to wait and see. For now, Jay's just gone to try and find us some parking. Well, we've parked, he's going to pay for the parking, and then we're going to set off for our little adventure for the day.
You feel like summer days to me, warm, tender, sunny rays. I hope that we are meant to be. You say nothing at all when we meet, yet somehow I know your history. Oh, come what may, I'm ready. Picture frames, lavender, romance. I get the chance to stop the run and be the lucky one.
Well, I feel like my hair is a bit of a dead giveaway that it was very, very windy out there. But aside from that, it was actually really, really lovely weather. Warmer than I expected, actually. I had to take my like headband off almost immediately, and very, very nearly contemplated taking off my coat as well, but I'm glad that I kept that on because it did get super windy at the top, and I now desperately needs to brush my hair. But that was actually one of the nicest walks that we have done in a long time. I feel like I definitely had the novelty of the coastal walk, because although we do a lot of walks at home, we very rarely will drive out to the coast. We'll often do like hill walks and go up into the dales and things, which are obviously really lovely, but also when you do it all the time, I guess you become like desensitized to a landscape to a certain extent. So when you go somewhere that you very rarely go, like we don't often go to the coast, it just looks so beautiful. And because it was such a sunny day, the sea just looked incredible, and that meant that even though it was windy, it actually felt really lovely out there. So I'd say, especially for Jay's birthday, but also just for the fact that it is a mid-November day, we have been very lucky with the weather, and I'm very happy about that. With that said, I need to try and sort out my knotty hair, and then the next thing on our agenda is to get some food. I am absolutely starving and hoping that we can find a pub that has something nice for vegans. Even if it's just chips, I'll be happy with chips and a Diet Coke. But yeah, we need to figure out where we're going to go next and grab us some food.
I've said it many times, I know I would change my ways, I know for sure. When all the crows decide to meet, they settle down beneath my feet. I've got it right and I got it wrong, but I learned my lesson hanging on. Come sit here with me by the fire and let it go for a little while. So be here as the night starts falling. Let my fingers walk over your head. We got nothing to be scared of. I'd rather be with you than by myself. Now all is in your hand.
Okay, I'm holding my hands up and saying that I definitely haven't done anywhere near as much reading of this book as I'd planned or hoped to this weekend, but equally couldn't have picked a better location to be starting a reread of a Harry Potter book, because this Airbnb cabin that we're staying in is giving me major Hagrid's Hut vibes. I know there are some Airbnbs actually that are like fully decked out to look exactly like Hagrid's Hut, and I think they book up like months and months in advance. This is not one of those places, but it is a super cute like round wooden cabin. There are fairy lights strung up everywhere, and it is just giving all of the wholesome cozy vibes that Hagrid's Hut gives to me in the Harry Potter books and films. So it really does feel like the perfect location to be starting my reread of The Order of the Phoenix. Now, saying that, I will say that The Order of the Phoenix is always the Harry Potter installment, in the films especially, but I think also in the books, that I always think of as being my least favourite of the series. Not to say I don't enjoy it, because I definitely do. I love all of the books and films in the series, but I just think there are elements of all of the other books and films that I enjoy more than this one. And I think there is something about Umbridge and her role in the Harry Potter series that obviously is intended to suck all of the joy and magic out of Hogwarts, and that is the entire point of her character, and therefore a large part of this entire book. But equally, those are the bits about Hogwarts that I like so much, and it's less so the darkness, because like the Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows and arguably parts of the Goblet of Fire are darker than some of the things that we have in this book, but equally I just feel like this book feels the least joyful of all of the books in the series and has the least intrigue to me. And I think that's probably, yeah, like I say, because of the fact that the nature of this plot is all about someone coming along and basically like taking all of the best parts away from Hogwarts, but equally that just means that I just don't enjoy it quite as much. However, I have read a few chapters now this evening. I'm currently on chapter 4, which is number 12, Grimmauld Place, and I'm on page 59 in my edition, and I am enjoying it so far. I think the beginning of this book is interesting because we get like a much longer section than we probably usually would between the beginning of the book, which obviously starts in the summer break, and then Harry going back to Hogwarts, I feel like that bit is much more extended, and it gives us a chance to get to know some other characters better, specifically the insight into his Aunt Petunia and like her knowledge into the wizarding world. You get a bit more insight into that, which I think is definitely interesting. And now we're about to go to Grimmauld Place and start to get an insight into what the Order of the Phoenix actually is. I love Remus Lupin and I love Sirius, so I feel like those parts of this book I enjoy. Then once we get to Hogwarts, which is usually like the nicest part of the book, we get Umbridge and it kind of brings things down a notch or two, but equally I'm enjoying the reread and hoping to get my way through a few more chapters this evening before going off to bed. It's obviously a huge book. This edition I have is 766 pages, so I am very much only scratching the surface of this book, but gonna plod on and read some more of it, probably make another cup of tea and get through a few more chapters, but enjoying it. And I'm gonna plan to soak up the atmosphere of reading in what I'm deeming Hagrid's hut for the rest of this evening. Home sweet home, and with the first festive drink of the season in hand, so I really can't complain. Just as yesterday, we couldn't have picked a more beautiful day for that coastal walk because it was just a little bit windy. Aside from that, just actually picture perfect and so lovely for walking around the coast. But today we couldn't have picked a better day for going home because we woke up to pouring rain and a gale force wind, so much more wind than yesterday, and I thought that was bad. So it felt like the perfect day to have to come home, and I know that I for one would not have wanted to tackle a coastal walk in the weather that we left behind this morning because it just wasn't very nice at all. So things really worked out for us this weekend for Jay's birthday, and I'm very grateful of that. But we managed to get home in quite good time. It's now just after midday, but we spent a good few hours in the car this morning and my hips were feeling so tight, and I feel like I just had that sensation of like wanting to shake off the car journey, so I decided to go straight out for a quick run, just a little one to kind of just get the legs moving, and strategically managed to place my finishing spot of the run right outside Costa Coffee so I could pick up one of their festive drinks. And like I said, my first one of the season. I ended up going for the roasted hazel latte with soy milk, and I got it with no cream, and it is absolutely delightful. But now that we're home, I'm planning to spend the rest of today, before obviously going back to work tomorrow, just relaxing and trying to do a bit more reading. So a very quick reading update before I dive back in, and it is a quick update because quite frankly I didn't actually end up doing any more reading last night at all. Instead we ended up watching a couple of episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which we're rewatching at the moment, and then I was tired and decided to go to bed instead of reading. I did however do a little bit more reading in the car this morning, so I'm now on page, let's see, 112, and that is chapter 7, The Ministry of Magic. So we're still not at Hogwarts and it is already 100 pages into the book, or just over 100 pages. So I feel like that adds to what I was saying yesterday, that I guess like this story is just a real turning point in the narrative of like what we're focusing on. And I think Hogwarts is, although still an important part of the narrative, like less central to the story now, and we start to move more towards, I guess, the focus on what is going on in the like rise of Voldemort and then the rise of the Order of the Phoenix, and how that's all coming into play, which doesn't necessarily have much to do with Hogwarts at all. So it's really interesting and I am enjoying it, definitely, although I said this isn't my favourite of the books. One thing that I do like about this book, and it's not just specific to this book, but it is something that we get a little bit of at the beginning, because we're getting so much extra context about the world that Harry Potter lives within, is the inclusion of house elves, and this is the one thing that I feel like the Harry Potter films really miss out on. I love the house elves. Obviously we get plenty of Dobby in the films, and I love Dobby. I actually named one of my pet rabbits when I was younger Dobby, and I think Dobby is a wonderful character. But obviously in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, we're introduced to Winky, another house elf who I think is absolutely incredible. And in this book we get introduced to Creature, who is another character I think is just so interesting. And I feel like house elves are just like something that only really gets scratched the surface of in the films, whereas in the books we get a lot more detail, and I really like that. So with that said, I obviously have the rest of the day off until I go back to work tomorrow. So I'm just going to do some more reading, enjoy my coffee, and I'll catch up with you hopefully with some more reading updates later on. I may or may not have just gotten myself a festive beverage for the second day in a row, and it may or may not be absolutely delicious. I got myself a soy gingerbread latte today, and I absolutely cannot make this a daily habit throughout the festive season because I will go bankrupt so quickly. But equally, today is my first day back at work after our long weekend celebrating Jay's birthday. Had a meeting that went on over lunchtime, or overlapped with when my lunchtime was supposed to start, and by the time it ended I felt like I needed a big fat sugar rush because I was feeling very depleted and in need of a pick-me-up, and B, a good excuse to actually get out of the house and go for a walk, and Costa provided the perfect opportunity to tick both of those boxes. So I went out, got myself a gingerbread latte, and although I don't want to make this a habit for the sake of my bank balance, I am enjoying it very much right now. As I've mentioned, I'm back at work right now, so unfortunately the weekend has come to a close. So I thought I would share one final reading update for Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix while I close off this vlog. I've made it to page 201, so almost a third of the way into this book, and I have to say I'm having a very different experience reading this book than I anticipated going in. So I decided to go back onto Goodreads and have a look and see when I actually did last read this book. I rated all of the Harry Potter books 5 stars every time I've read them because I just find them to be such a comforting and nostalgic book series to read, and I always just have such a good time. But obviously even within a series that you rate very highly all the way through, there are always things that you remember enjoying more than others, and so this one, like I said, I remembered maybe not enjoying as much of the others. And the last time I read it was in September of 2019, so 4 years ago now. It's been a while, and I'm actually having a much more enjoyable time reading this than I expected. And I think specifically so far, that has come down to the fact that I actually think this might be one of my favourite beginning sections in all of the Harry Potter books. And I think reading the series over again, I've grown a real appreciation for the things that we maybe don't get in as much detail in the film series. And so I feel like in the films there's always a rush to get to Hogwarts because that is where most of the action takes place. And so even in the Order of the Phoenix film, where we do get to see the Grimmauld place and the Order of the Phoenix at the beginning of the book, and we have the Dementor situation, it still happens fairly quickly and then you're back at Hogwarts. Whereas in this book you get 9 whole chapters, which is roughly almost 200 pages of story before you actually get even onto the Hogwarts Express. So I feel like there is so much house elves, as I've already discussed, but also other characters who we're familiar with, like Lupin and Sirius and the Weasley family, who are maybe a little bit more extended from the main story. We just get so much more detail about them and start to see how these other characters interact with each other outside of the context of just their direct relation to Harry, and we get to see a lot more insight into who they are and how they function in general life, which I'm finding really interesting. So having a much more enjoyable time with this story than I expected, which is always a positive thing. We are of course now back at Hogwarts, so I feel like it's kind of going to settle in and maybe take a bit of a dip in terms of interest, because I just don't find Dumbledore's army to be a particularly compelling storyline, which obviously is a vast majority of this book. But either way, gonna plod on and keep reading. This evening I'll be finishing work and then hopefully digging into some more of this book. But for now, I'm gonna finish off my gingerbread latte, get back to my desk for an afternoon of work, and I will see you in the next one. So thank you so much for watching.